All right. Good morning, board. Over to you, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 Washington County Board of Commissioners work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington. I'm joined by Vice Chair Pam Treese, Commissioners Nafisa Bai and Jason Snyder. Commissioner Jerry Willie will be joining us as soon as he is able. We have a very full day for a work session day. So we're going to dive right into it and start off with the CPO and CCI modernization project update. We have findings from engagement. So welcome to our team leaders.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. Just a quick introduction. I'm Philip Bransford, he, him pronouns communications officer, the County Administrative Office, and I'm joined by an able team here.
Alicia Sojourner. Why am I blanket?
Equity and
Thank you.
Washington County, for Washington.
For Washington County, Washington County only. Yes. You're not going anywhere. No. Wow.
It's early and there's been a time change.
Yes, thank you.
We're still easing into this. Are we in daylight savings now?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are.
3 days in. And good morning, Board of Commissioners. I'm Courtney Duke Dreesen, interim county counsel for Washington County.
Well,
Can at least 5 Washington counties
30.
in the U.S.
30.
30.
I stand corrected.
30.
If we have 6 more, we'll have as many as there are counties in our state.
There you go. I think at least 30. Anyway, we get calls from other parts of the Anyway, this is so fun. Thank you so much. Let's get this rolling. I'm having a great time. Okay, so here's an overview for our presentation today. We appreciate your time to come back to you about our CPO modernization project. We're going to first just talk about the scope of the community engagement effort here in Washington County in general. Going to go over what that project is, that modernization project. What was that again? Let's talk about that just as a reminder. We've been in the field getting lots of input, and we want to share with you what our findings are from that. We have on the staff end here switched up our recommendation to you with respect to the timing of the project. The goals we're still focused on, and then we want to make sure to check in with your board about any questions you have and clarify next steps. So that's our overview. If that looks okay to you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Alicia now.
So we just wanted to start with our current community engagement opportunities. So as you can see, we have fairly wide opportunities for community members to get involved, to connect, to contact each one of you all as well. And we also know we have a great opportunity to create even more ways of engaging with our community members, which is something that we are currently looking at, how to even expand what we do even more to bring more people in. But this is just a quick snapshot of our different ways that we engage. And as you can see, CPO is one of the ways that we most definitely engage with our community members and to really hear what is going on within, especially the unincorporated areas within our county.
So last summer in August, we were before your board to talk about the planning work that we had been doing as staff and about our proposed plan to engage in this modernization work. And at that time, we had discussed 5 elements of the program and the current structure that we wanted to focus on in this modernization space. Those 5 elements, just to level set and remind everyone, were to modernize the language. As you recall, these ordinances that created the program are quite old and had language that was outdated and needed to be updated. We also talked about the focus and scope of the project. And in that regard, we were talking about really returning the program to its roots of focusing on goal 1 and land use planning. We also talked about membership and eligibility, and in particular, the idea of how the leadership of the CPO and CCI would be identified and put in place. And there we talked about our rationale was trying to bring alignment with the other boards and commissions that your board is involved in appointing membership and leadership roles, not membership, but leadership roles in. So we wanted to bring some alignment with this CPO and CCI program. The fourth element was program requirements, which was really, my bailiwick. We're talking, making sure we solidify and enforce that the CCI and CPO are public bodies subject to the Public Meetings Law, the Public Records Law, and government ethics. And then finally, we had some discussions about boundaries. And in this case, we were talking about the CPO boundaries that exist in each of the commissioner districts and talking about what made sense today for the program and perhaps also right sizing and simplifying those boundaries in some regards. Next slide. So back in August of 24, this is the timeline that we brought to your board for discussion. We are in the 2025 line in March. We have done all the work up to this point, and we are here today, except for, as Mr. Bransford likes to remind me, we do not have a first draft of the RNO for you today, but we will talk about that as we move forward when that'll come to you.
All right, so let's get into the engagement. That's the central aspect of our presentation today, and we've done a lot of work here. I want to straight away thank Ika Fallstrom and Eva Haas, who helped us tremendously on a lot of the work that I'm going to describe here. And we'll click through those 5 elements one at a time. But in general, what we did here was since about October 22nd, we activated that online community survey. We got 203 responses, and we shut the online portion down on December 28th. Then we did a lot of in-person, more qualitative input, reaching out as well with 5 presentations to different CPOs and the CCI between September and December. 1 in-person listening session held in October, 1 virtual listening session held in November. I got to go to a couple of these and answered questions and engaged with Ika's support, and that was very helpful. Appreciated all of the participation. Okay, so let's go in element by element along the same list that Courtney described. So element 1 had to do with modernizing the language, and the area that we wanted to focus on was that the current resolution order, which was the most comprehensive direction from the board, came in 1986. That's the resolution in order we're talking about. Has a lot of outdated language, and I'm going to go rather fast because this is more of a, as you might recall, set of slides. I think your board is pretty to speed, but I'm just going to touch on these to bring us all back to this moment here. So that was what we were trying to do. We're trying to look at the language in that resolution in order that could be updated, modernize the terminology. Was the staff recommendation. The rationale was that we wanted to align this document with the county's current and more inclusive approach to community engagement in general, among other things we were trying to update. So in terms of what the community had to say about this, they were pretty much in agreement. On the online survey here, you can see the pie chart shows a good 2/3 really of the responses were, yeah, we need to do that, and 44% was strongly in alignment with, yes, let's modernize some of those terms. Let's do non-gendered language. Let's not refer to an entity OSU extension that no longer provides a service support anyway. And I think that was the general gist of our feedback on that first element. Moving on to the second element, this one had to do with focus and scope. So here, what we were zeroing in on is confusion over topics to be focused on and the program's role within the city. So since the inception of the community engagement CPO program in the 1980s, it was strictly focused in the early days on the community planning efforts in the urban and unincorporated areas. And has it evolved, as Courtney was saying, to include city dwellers as well as a broad range of topics, beyond just strictly land use. So that has, over time, led to some confusion among various parties in Washington County, including what topics the board is trying to seek from the program. Is it strictly focused on land use, or is it more? What geographic parts of Washington County does the board wish to draw participation from? Does it include cities? Does it not? Those kinds of things. So that's where we were coming from. In terms of the staff recommendation, we were bringing to your board the idea of returning the focus of the program to land use planning and transportation planning within the unincorporated areas, and maintaining the Committee on Citizen Involvement's role under Oregon's land use planning rules. Goal 1 being citizen involvement. That's still the word that's used in the rules. Citizen involvement. Through that centralized committee, maintaining that compliance. That was our recommendation. The rationale was to clarify the program's purpose. So in brief, the findings show that there were some concerns about this element related to attendance and limiting the current functions of the CPO, including providing information from community specific issues. And some of the ways, I'll just add to that a little bit. Some of the ways that this came out is, a CPO will invite other agencies to the meetings, Tualatin Hill Park and Rec and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, just to name a couple, and there would be updates. And that there was a little concern there: is that going to go away? So that's just to add a little dimension to that finding there, and I'm going very quickly, but those are some of the thoughts there. Element 3 had to do with membership and eligibility, and what we were trying to address there had to do with leadership selection. That, as Courtney mentioned, we're realizing is out of step with the overall rubric or framework that your board has in place with the other boards and commissions that are advising your board. And so the staff recommendation was to take steps towards bringing alignment for this CPO program to that overall approach that your board is taking with other boards and commissions. So that would mean appointing members to, in this case, the hub of the organization would be the committee on, we call it community involvement, appointing those members, and those members in turn serving as the spokes out to individual CPOs. CPOs then could engage in leadership selection to flesh out how that footprint would, how that leadership function would happen at the CPO level. But your board would have that same approach to this entity that's advising you, CCI, and then we would be able to scale up to active CPO leadership as well. This would allow more inclusive criteria to be looked at as a routine, because you're used to that with our other boards and commissions. We bring to you recommendations with clear transparency as to how we're serving the full community and attempting to involve every aspect of our community in terms of inclusion. The rationale was to align the CCI and the CPOs to the board's approach to boards and commissions, like I said, and continue with those inclusivity goals. So in sum, the findings from the outreach were that feedback indicated this element needed further education and discussion. It wasn't, I don't think, immediately grasped that what we were actually trying to say in terms of the staff recommendation to the community and the participants of the program. There was also, I have to point out, a strong theme of not wanting the board to appoint and select and appoint members of the CCI. That was coming from different parts of our participants in our online survey, responders. So those are some of the aspects of that.
Can you explain why?
Yeah.
Like, is there some context around like the why of that? Or?
Well, I have my interpretation of,
Go for it.
okay, all right. So I think there's great pride in the independence of these different programs. It's one of the few countywide programs that is geographically specific. And when you think about the identity that um, that ensues from being associated with a particular community, a particular neighborhood, there's a lot of pride in that representation. And I think that it's and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but this is what I was hearing when I was in some of these sessions, that hey, we want to be independent, we want to be representing our community, and we don't want a board to pick and choose. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I have a question for you as well, and thanks for pulling that question out. Uh, I'm in contact with a lot of people in the CPO structure as well, and I would think I don't think that strong theme means unanimous theme.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I just want to point that out, that I think that I don't think that means that there was a majority or all people. Was it loudly delivered? I probably agree with that.
Okay.
But I think that there are many that recognize what the structure looks like and see value in the alignment with other organizations that are similar in nature. So I just want to put out what I think is the balance there.
Thank you.
So when you say, I think you pointed out not wanting, but could you also reflect what, I don't know, like as accurately as possible, what the people that gave you these feedback, the 203 people, right? The feedback you got. If there was a strong theme of not wanting, what was the strong theme of what they wanted to keep the current structure as it is without board involvement? Or was there a compromise to say, we see the need for a change, we see where the county is heading, here's how we're going to meet you halfway? Was there sort of that level of discussion among the county staff and the CCI members?
No, not probably as much as anybody would desire. I think there's more discussion. That's my impression that will clearly need to happen here. But just to pick up some of the terms that you were mentioning, I think the participants in the program that I hear from very much want your board's involvement. The involvement is highly valued. Having you all participate in meetings and such that's really encouraged. That's what I was hearing. It was more, I think, had to do with control, like who's gonna pick the leaders. That's where this element takes the conversation, and so there was a little pushback.
Was it also leaders of CPOs? Okay.
Yeah.
So is there I feel like I hear you recommending a recommendation with your comment just now, which is more conversation need to be had. So is there a staff recommendation that says we're recommending all of this, but also further discussion to really flesh that out so that we meet the community where they are, right? And not force anything. I think change needs to happen. Change is inevitable. And I think the members realize that. But people need to be on the journey with that change. So is there a fourth recommendation to say further discussions to further flesh it out?
You're getting ahead of me. You're foreshadowing.
I think there's confusion here. The recommendation here is to appoint members of the CCI.
Right.
Okay. And what this notice is that there needs to be further education with, for example, the current CCI members as to the whys and what fors.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
But let's not refer to the CCI and the CPO in one broad brush stroke.
Yes, and I'm doing a very fast, high altitude flyover of the 5 elements, but the
These
two
are
of you
findings from what you've discussed
in very broad brush.
Yeah.
But the two of you foreshadowed the end of this presentation, which is more conversation.
I'm just focusing on this slide.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not trying to foreshadow anything.
Okay.
Focusing on this
It
slide.
turns out that there's a lot of wisdom that I'm absorbing from the two of you. So I appreciate that.
That's
what
very
I'm trying to
kind of
point
you.
out. No, it's all right. Well, let's move. Why don't we move on to the fifth one?
Sure.
Okay, so this one, sorry, the fourth one. So this one had to do with program requirements, and here we were zeroing in on confusion among some program participants about the CCI and CPO status under the Public Meetings Law and Records Law and other aspects, like what are the minimum number of participants to qualify as an active CPO, duties of program leaders, rules around voting, those kinds of things. And so this, Courtney mentioned this earlier, the staff recommendation was to clarify that in a new RNO, basic program requirements for participants, compliance with meetings law, ethics rules, and so forth. That was where the staff was coming from. Rationale was that all participants would gain a better understanding of the rules by which participants must conduct themselves, and these clarifications would also bring the program into alignment with how the board is approaching other boards and commissions, and I would dare say, Courtney would agree with me, and with state law. So that was the rationale. This is a colorful chart, but I would sum it up to say there was a lot of interest in learning more. There wasn't. I wouldn't call this a pushback. I would call it. Then it would be wonderful, county, if you provided more training in this area so that we can understand our responsibilities here. So I think that's part of what we were capturing in our outreach and dialogue. Then the fifth and final element had to do with the boundaries of the program. And as you might recall, the program began with land use planning in those early days, in the late 70s, early 80s. Community plans were first required of cities, but then also of counties eventually. And so there was a rationale here by current staff. There are about 11 planning staff, and they drew a grid on a map and said, those are going to be our community planning areas. We have enough staff to associate the project that way. And from that seed grew what we have today. It is, there's activations and non-activations, but I think part of what we're saying here in terms of the staff recommendation is to pay close attention to the staff capacity as it was borne out in the beginning days. So must it be scrutinized now? How much staff capacity do we have in the organization to help support any number of geographically specific input or advisory bodies like CPOs? So the thought was, how about no less than one and no more than 3 CPOs per commissioner district, and to adjust the boundaries automatically with commissioner district redistricting that's outlined in the charter, so that that wouldn't be yet another big heavy staff lift, but would be an automatic process. And the rationale was that it would remove confusion about commissioner district CPO relationships, so there would be more of a clarity there in terms of which CPOs represent which areas. Better support the program's focus on long-range land use planning, as we were talking about earlier, in the urban unincorporated, or in the unincorporated areas is how we're describing it now, and ensures that staff capacity is met. So the feedback or the input we received ranged from leaving the existing boundaries to the community to help identify. There was a lot of, this is referring back to my other comments about pride in the identity around where you live and how that is named, and how might we bring that energy to a discussion around boundaries and how to draw them. There was a lot of talk, a lot of conversation around urban area versus rural area. There's lots of different ways of looking at how community input can come to a county organization. When you have that level of difference across your 727 square mile territory, there's a different perspective in the rural area versus as compared to the urban area. And I think that came out in the conversation we were having with this outreach work. And then finally, there was interest in how commissioner districts should be used in conjunction with other boundaries that other entities overlay on top of what happens here in Washington County. There's all kinds of special districts, the school districts, come up frequently. It's like, okay, well, let's look at their boundary and see how that might overlay.
We do
with-
that with commissioner districts already.
Right. Yes. And so that was coming up here as well. And because that map is so darn small, I got a bigger one here in case you wanted to take a look at how it's arrayed currently. And that's in your packet as well.
So we get to our revised staff recommendation. So a lot of great work was happening even before I got here. And then once I came on, I've been listening to CCI's meeting with some CPO members and also just having some real conversations with ICA as well. And we want to be very intentional and strategic about how do we support community engagement and participation overall. So and on top of that, we are also going through a budget focus. Thank you. I was looking for the word. And so which might also shift how we overall serve our community. We will always serve our community, but it might look different. It might, so with that, we would like to pause the modernization part of this project. So not pause the CCI or the CPO. They're going to continue going, but looking at the modernization portion of it until late summer, early fall. So we can be intentional and strategic about how do we really bring this community participation into 2025 and think about our generations coming forward as well. And strategically, this will also give the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement time to rehire for some very important positions, as we are a very skeleton team right now. Mighty, but that will also give us some time to bring in new talent onto the team to help us engage with our community overall. So that is our current recommendation to the board.
So I just want to know, when you talk about bringing talent with regard to community engagement, it is for the entire umbrella of community engagement.
100%.
And I want to also underscore, this is not an increase in staff. We've had staff move on to other public sector agencies and increase leadership roles. And so we need to fill those staff positions.
So we had given direction previously to get this project done by within the first half of this year. I don't have a problem with adjusting to the realities of where we're at, but I think we need to get this done, get all the legislative changes before the end of this calendar year.
Agree 100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. We'd also really pushed, since we have done extensive analysis as well as community engagement around the commissioner districts, to align the next rev of boundaries for CPOs with commissioner districts. We've just done enough with the analysis paralysis. We need to align it and move forward so that your resources can be spent on the necessary education and the positive engagement with regard to what is on the agency's plate and moving forward into 2026 and beyond, because there is a lot. So that's where I was hoping to ensure that we all have a clear understanding with regard to next steps. Any other board thoughts? Oh, the other thing, within using your map on those boundaries, raising the point about urban versus rural. I know Metro Council is going through their future vision, but the boundaries that they use for the UGB, for us, we don't get into the confusion with the Metro Service District like Clackamas County does. But I picked up on your point about urban versus rural. I don't have a problem with doing something like, and this is just illustrative, combining CPO 10 and CPO 15 into a rural CPO for District 3, and then having, once again, illustrative, another CPO district for the urban area. And that would leverage both the current UGB, but also utilize the urban, the few urban reserve areas that we continue to have in Washington County, because that is where the Metro Council will draw from for future UGB. So I think that will help with that future transition as well. But we really need to simplify and align and move forward. Other commissioners? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I had a thought on the urban-rural interface as well, and it is not in direct response to what Chair Harrington just was suggesting or commenting. So I want to give that context, and I think even what he was proposing as an illustration may make sense. What I would say is that I think the urban-rural interface is a very important sort of part of the overall county conversation in general. Like, I think that's a place where a lot of tension around a lot of the goal one stuff actually happens. And so I think that we need to be careful around that. And also the decision about whether or not to have more urban or rural focused, or whether those are combined, also is pretty impacted by whether the sort of people that are in cities are part of this in the future or not. If they are, I think that's a core decision or core component of whatever the recommendation is before you even get to the urban rural interface question. And to me, I think there are places where that urban rural interface, like, I don't know what it would mean if everyone in urban and everyone in rural were not in the same CPOs. Like, then who? That would seem really, in some cases, take Bull Mountain, for example, like around that area where there's a lot of that interface. Like, I'm not sure how that group would do functional work if one was one and the other was, I mean, they'd have to have joint meetings all the time.
The answer for that is easy. We don't do anything for the UUA areas of Bull Mountain.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we need to be clear and specific about here. We're a county government. Mm-hmm. We're not paid to do something special for UUAs. There are requirements from Metro and the state that demand that we do certain things, but we have creativity to ask other jurisdictions to do that on our behalf, as informed by our urban service agreements and so forth. So what I don't want us to confuse is we're not creating CPOs just because of UUAs.
I totally agree. I just think on a countywide level, that space where the urban-rural interface happens is where there's a lot of stress and where there's a lot of action, I think, in this space. So just how all that plays out.
Could you give me some examples of what you're tuned into?
Tile Flat Road.
Yes.
Good example.
That's where using
just in a short example.
That's related to the urban reserve and the UGB. And that's where there can be joint meetings or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interface. It's a good example of an issue that sort of engages and involves if you want to separate things as urban or rural, that's, you know, it's a both and.
I don't think we're trying to separate, but rather look at how do we ensure that the experience of county services and the relationship with other jurisdictions is maximized and clear. Because the rural folks, they have a reliance on the sheriff's office that is in some ways similar, but in other ways different than the urban areas. So
The other comment I would share, and this is just a thought, it's nothing more than that, is that I do like things to be simplified and logical when they can be. And I would just comment that a future proposal may have, as an example, the chairs of the CPOs serve on the CCI, and I don't think it's a direct relationship now in that way. There may be some overlap. It used to be. So I would, that is a structure I would at least be considered in the future.
Yeah, I think that's where staff was coming from as well.
Okay. I hadn't heard that specifically. Those are my only two comments, and I appreciate, I haven't really been able to weigh in on this in the past, even though I've been here for a conversation. So I wanted to share those thoughts. And I know I gave you some other feedback during the briefing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you both, and everyone, Courtney included, that's been working on this project. I feel like we've been on this journey for quite some time now, so I just want to pause and recognize all the great work and the investments we made into this project. And I am in support of what you all are recommending, the staff's recommendation to pause and to come back. I don't have the urgency. I don't have any problem with the urgency the chair pointed out to finish this. So I'm happy to support as well on that one. The comment I have for you is with this project, I think you have heard a really great demonstration about the urban and rural divide. So go in there do your due diligence with that conversation and facilitate it. I'm sure you'll do a great job of facilitating that. But that's a reality and that exists. And in my own short time here, 4 years, I've seen it and saw the impact of that. Now, my comment for when you do come back after the pause is that I would like to understand, or from your own due diligence, what the accessibility or the barriers to accessibility will be if we do combine. Like, I like to understand a bit more about where these CPOs actual happen now and how community members access or come to this. Like, is it a transportation or public transportation? And then if we do combine, what does that mean for the communities that live there? So I just want to understand a bit more about the accessibility part and what it means when we do combine, and what kind of barriers, unintended consequences do you foresee that could happen? So other than that, go forth after your pause and look forward to learning more.
Thank
Well, and I apologize coming in late, so you may have already covered this. You alluded to, directed to our budget shortfalls that we have. We are making these decisions in the next couple of months, so I'd like to know, not today, but more specifically, how much money we spend on specifically CPO meetings. And I know CCIs are in there and there's kind of a blend. So I don't know if you're going to be able to differentiate that, but for the budget decisions that we have coming at us, I'd like to know how much money we are spending specifically on this program. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Willie, I know you weren't asking for this, but just as a reminder to your board, Any items within the proposed budget will be available starting April 28th. And so we need to separate out what policy discussions we are having versus the proposed balanced budget that will be presented to you on April 28th. So that's just a reminder. I know you weren't asking for that information today.
I'd just like to say thank you for the work. I think it's good. Two things. Number one, I believe that you are doing this, but I just want all of us to remember that these CPOs have such different personalities as well, and it's not just whether it's rural or whether it's UUA. There's all sorts of different issues, and frankly, learning issues that the different CPOs have. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is a, I'm going to name it as angst in the CPO structure about this modernization process. So my point is that I have urgency around getting to this earlier because of that angst and because of the dysfunction I think that occurs and the position of discomfort between staff and CPOs and that type of thing. So I would encourage that we get to this earlier than later. I'm not comfortable with a prolonged piece afterwards, after the budget. So just put that out there as well.
Are you comfortable with the December?
Yes, I am.
Line, Chair?
But
Before the end of the year.
Yeah.
End of the calendar year.
Yep.
Yeah. So and that is
Doesn't have to be in December.
Yeah, then no later than.
Yes.
and that I just wanted to name the fact that that's why I really want to see this roll out.
Absolutely.
I think we've had this before the Board of Commissioners plenty of times. It's been talked about in quarterly updates, specific work sessions. It's time to pause this for now, have staff pick back up on their efforts right after budget and get this done by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great work. Okay, next we're going to move to board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first from the board?
I can go next since I wasn't here last week and I get to share some of the exciting stuff I've been up to. Last week, I had the opportunity to travel to DC and attend and participate the National Association of National Association of County Officials. Yesterday was AOC, which is Oregon Association of Oregon County. So my acronyms are a little messed up this morning. But nevertheless, let's start over.
What was the tone like at NACO?
Yes, NACO. Thank you, Chair. It was a collective high of uncertainty. I think that everyone was uncertain of where we're heading. I think that everybody had questions and concerns about the administration, and every county was sort of confused of where the administration was heading and what's next. There wasn't one I attended. So the first day was a full day of transportation. I'm a vice chair for the NACO's transportation committee, and I had an opportunity to lead a breakout session. And one of the breakout session, one of the things that we talked about was the service transportation reauthorization legislation. And the amount, I had like a group of 15 people, and the amount of people who were just uncertain where the country was heading, if what's going to happen to some of the grants, some of the money that's coming, was just really disturbing. But what was very helpful was everybody, all the local government, no matter where they are political, or if they voted for the current administration or not, they had a sort of this pragmatism, hope that they exuded, that were like, we're going to get through. This is what local government is. we understand what's happening in DC, but this is the steps we're taking as a community. We're coming together. We're conduits to good information. We let people know that we're on top of it. We're tracking every information. So I think for me, it really reinvigorated me as a commissioner to attend and to hear about over 3,000 county commissioners and judges and sheriffs and DAs to sort of hear what is happening in their own counties. Some counties actually had about less than 30,000 people that were all the way to Missouri, some small county in Missouri, to all the way to Oregon and meet so many. I think we were about 32 county commissioners from Oregon that attended AOC. So people really had hope to say, we are in this role as county commissioners to serve the people. We're going to tune out and, mute the distractions that are happening and focus on what we can do. So that was really good information. And to demonstrate that, there was two sessions that was one focused on oversight, uh, what is happening from the administration, and the other one was about immigration. And both of these sessions, no matter what time you showed up, as quickly as the other session ended, as soon as you got there, as soon as that session started, there were no place to sit because people really wanted to learn more about what is happening in DC and the impact that had, and then immigration. So those were two things that really stood out for me, those two sessions that everybody sort of prioritized. And then I'll be quick, Chair Harrington. And then I spent a whole day with our federal lobbyists. I want to give a staff, Tanya, the staff put together really well thought out and condensed and really succinct information to our federal delegation, to take it to our federal delegation. Erin Doyle, thank you so much for all the work that you put in. So I spent a whole day lobbying our federal delegations, and board, we focused on the 3 projects that we approved as a board, as you know. And I think what I heard in the discussions from federal, there were a lot of uncertainties about the funding, the current funding projects that we have, but they really had good things to say about our project. One of the first projects was the equipment for the sheriff's office, and we were asking our federal delegation to give us a $3 million. The second project was the seismic enhancement for our Walnut Street Center, and that we asked for $3 million from our federal delegation, as well as the visitor center and the campground projects at Scoggins Valley Park, and that was another $3 million. So in totality, we asked our federal delegation $9 million, and
Thank you, Commissioner Fye.
they really appreciated the projects, the concept of the projects, the impact of the projects. They just couldn't really say, yes, we'll get you this money because they weren't unsure about the federal administration. But yes, I run out of time, Chair Harrington.
Other commissioners?
I can go. Thursday, after our roundtable meeting last Thursday, we had a library steering committee, and it was full of proposals and recommendation making, and we'll be talking about that later. Friday morning, I attended along with there were 4 of us that were at the Portland Metro Chamber electeds briefing on the 2025 State of the Economy, and this was really an in-depth review of the information that you've seen in the media as being the dupe. And that
you are what you project. It's
yes.
really unfortunate that the Portland Metro Chamber is choosing to project our area is in a doom loop.
They tried not to say the words, but that was what the report was saying. You're right. So following that, I did have lunch with Portland Mayor Keith Wilson. We talked about his initiatives around homelessness. I did ask the question about what other issues he is focusing on. He talked about transportation, a few other things, but the conversation kept coming back to the number 1 priority there. So
being his 28
million.
$1 million for overnight shelter.
Yes. Thank you. Then I had a long constituent call with Debbie Garman, Donna Maybori, Jim Haven, Ingrid Arnett, Laurel Biles to discuss their climate action priorities. And I named those people so that if you have similar conversations, you just are aware what's happening and their concern about our upcoming budget. Yesterday, I had a tour of the Oregon State University, the Washington County Extension offices out in Beaverton. I did talk with the Extension Services Forester and encouraged him to contact you, Jerry, about some of the issues that you're working on. It was an interesting, very interesting experience there, and they're concerned about their budget as well. Then yesterday, I attended the AOC Legislative Committee, and there was no disagreement between Washington County positions and the positions that AOC is taking. I don't need to say anything more about that. And last night I attended the CPO 6 and 7 meeting. I know Nafisa was there online. It was about the 185th overcrossing of TriMet, and just giving an update of Hillsborough was there, Beaverton was there, Washington County was there, and TriMet was there to give an update of what they're looking at, and the fact that what we need to progress there is grant money, and the lack of availability of grant money, although the process for the SMART grants through Metro is beginning. So next week I am out, and the following week I am out. I will be back and available on Thursday, March 27th and Friday, March 28th. Then I leave again for DC, and we'll be back in the office on Wednesday, the 2nd.
Back on your meeting with climate-focused folks. So the climate update that we received is now in today's packet, right, Angie? It was today's packet that it's in?
We'll verify and make sure it's in.
Yeah. Okay.
Since we're talking.
Additionally, I would suggest that update, I put in a suggestion via email. I think it needs to be provided on our climate landing page as well. Yep.
Thank you for that. And and like I said, I brought it forward because I know we're all experiencing those conversations.
Who else? Who's next?
Go ahead, Jason.
Let's see, last Thursday I had a one-on-one with the CAO. The Friday morning went to the State of the Economy Central City and Downtown report out. Interesting conversation. They did try to downplay the use of the doom loop terminology. I guess that is actually an official academic thing, and one of the only official academic things they've ever seen sort of make it into the mainstream media. That was interesting observation. It certainly got lots of people's attention and everybody talking about it. Yesterday, I worked with the IT team at the county and my staff assistant to get social media accounts set up for me at the county, so you'll see that. This Thursday, I have an extremely busy day with a Explore Tualatin Valley board meeting. Juvenile Justice Team has a RFK Foundation intro happening. There's the ribbon cutting at the Altura Apartments, and then a Metro mixer for new electeds. It's going to be a long day. Looking forward to it. Friday.
New, but all elected.
They say new, but then they invited everybody. So yeah, I'm just going with the title, but yeah.
New and shiny.
I'm slightly confused about that part too, but it is what it is.
I hope they'll give you a tour of the zoo, or maybe show you a recently born baby elephant.
She's very
have
cute.
to see that.
Friday, I have lunch with a constituent, Ayla Hoffler, at her request, and then Saturday morning, I'm having breakfast with Rep Bowman to have some discussions.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I continue to work with the Salmonberry Trail people and our LUT people, trying to move ahead on what are the process and the steps that we need to do to get that some trail built. Like Pam said, we had the Library Levy Steering Committee last week. There's more of that today. attended the Portland Metro Chamber electeds briefing again. And my takeaway to that was that there are some things that I would like to ask to be specifically focused on. What's the impact in Washington County? There's a lot of data. I brought back the brochure that has a number of flyers in it with statistics from Echo Northwest's information, and we're painted with the same brush. We're in the same region, and so how Portland goes, how we go. And so I think there's some things in there that we need to pay attention to, specifically with the outflow of money and people out of the region to primarily to Clark County and other places. So I think we need to be paying attention to that that data points. I met with Banks' new mayor, Marcia Kirk, and she gave me a great overview of the development that's going on in their community, on both east and west side. And so lots of things there, a new school that's been approved. And so that community is going to significantly change over the next 5 years. And it was good to see what plans they are putting together and how they, quite frankly, how they navigate from where the golf course is now to downtown and to the other side of town, because there's a railroad track in the middle there. So it makes transportation difficult.
There's a railroad track in the middle of Beaverton too.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've been able to navigate around that. That's what they're going to have to do, is because with Hampton closing, that changed the use of that railway considerably. So they may be asking to have the rails pulled, and so there's a lot of stuff going on. Anytime you're dealing with the railroad, that's a long time investment of time. She also had some comments about Five Oaks Museum. We can talk about that later. And then very quickly, yesterday I was in the AOC Transportation Subcommittee, Transportation and Economic Development Subcommittee. We talked about 6 different bills that they were talking about. Not many of them really applied to us unless you want to allow ATVs on our roadways. They talked about that. The 4% tax on tires, family dwellings outside the UGB, grants and loans for infrastructure, for housing inside the urban growth boundary. So anyway, I just listen in on those. I check back with Aaron whenever I think there's something that's pertinent with us. But for the most part, the group votes pretty unanimously on whether they're going to oppose or support. So it's always a good conversation. So that's all I got.
Thank you. I attended the AOC steering committees for general government and revenue and veterans, as well as public safety steering committee as usual, then followed up with the board of directors, and I was able to participate in the first hour of the ledge committee. That went the first hour at least went more smoothly than I anticipated it would. At the board of directors meeting, we approved the review for the executive director, and there was some discussion about dues, and some folks perceive that the cap had been set with the phrase that, well, we'll never hit that, which I don't agree with at all. I think there's some rewriting of history going on. And I contributed that we are, in fact, looking forward to hitting the cap because the urban dues structure is out of balance. There are 10 of 36 counties with populations greater than 100,000, and they need the constant reminder that we're happy to participate as we are one Oregon, but they need to be pulling more of their own weight, that we have the same revenue dire situations that other smaller counties do too. Yesterday was the second work group of the Metro President's work group on housing and affordable and homelessness. What I want to say about that is I'm really struck by how disorganized that effort is, and I don't particularly see it doing or accomplishing a lot before it's supposed to quote unquote end in June, and before whenever it might be that Metro Council refers this. Yesterday, I contributed after there was this doom loop reference that our recent polling shows that the voters of Washington County think that the county area is on the right track. So don't throw all local governments or local areas under the same bus as potentially City of Portland and Multnomah County. So there's some follow-up that folks are asking for information, and it's like, it's all there. We do a great job of being transparent. Just look at our work session packet. But on the positive side, I'll be testifying at the House Committee on Revenue later today and on Thursday for potentially for another committee at the state ledge. And we have the affordable housing opening, as well as the homeless solution affordable housing opening coming up. So we're all invested in those things. So I hope to see you all there. Onward, ho we go. Have a good vacation, Commissioner Treese. Thank you for role modeling taking vacation. It's really important. Allows one to get recharged. So onward to leadership communication, and I'm seeing some kerfluffle going on.
So the kerfluffle is my request. Actually, for that kerfluffle, I do have 2 slides that I would like to show the board. The board has seen the first slide, which the first slide depicts the 3-county tax rate. So as your board is aware, we are going through the annual exercise of balancing Washington County's budget. So working directly with departments on the problem solving to get to a balanced budget. This slide just reminding the good work under the leadership of your board to continue to deliver services each and every day. The $1.35 is the math exercise that sometimes we do in our heads. So the $1.35 is after the transfer, the current transfer of MSTIP and libraries that we operate our general fund departments and services on. Next slide. I guess. I'm going to switch quick. Oh, okay, it's done for me. So this slide, we continue to build. Oh, I should get to the mic. This is a slide that we continue to build out. I'm currently working with county administrators to collect more data on the shortfalls of counties across the state. We are not unique in what we are facing. Many of the counties are facing cuts. We are unique in the standpoint of the expiration of our 30-year SIP agreement. We are not unique in the pressures of inflation, unfunded and underfunded mandates. So you will continue to see this built out with information from counties of what they are experiencing in their budgets as they go through their budget planning process this year. And that concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
And are the majority of those gaps around the 3% limitation?
Yeah, well, because the property tax, yes,
Okay.
because the property tax rate is not keeping up with the cost of service,
Right.
Primarily inflation,
Yep.
personnel cost,
I just wanted to put it
and I
forward.
want to also say the underfunded, unfunded mandates, so contributing for counties.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Duke Dreesen.
Good morning, Chair Harrington. As you'll see on your agenda, I'm going to have a lot of discussion with you today. So I'll try and keep this brief.
Great.
But um, I did want to highlight the Washington County and Clackamas County versus Oregon Health Authority and the Oversight and Accountability Council update we gave you last Friday in the hot sheet. As you know, as you authorized, we filed a petition for judicial review on the validity of OAC's Drug and Treatment Recovery Service Fund grant distribution formula, arguing that it was improperly adopted rule. As part of that petition, we also asked for a petition to stay any application of that rule while the petition for judicial review was ongoing. We did lose that petition for stay, but there was really good news in the decision because the court found that the counties are likely to succeed in a finding that the OAC is an agency for all intents and purposes under the APA, and that the formula is a rule under the APA. We lost the stay on the finding of irreparable harm. Essentially, we would have had to show that we had no other way to fund the program, which just was not something showing we could reach. So the stay was denied, but there was a lot of good news in the order, and the petition goes on. And in fact, we have filings due this week, and a final decision will come sometime after that. So we continue to push on this issue and continue to move it forward. That's it for me.
Great. Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, CWS.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good morning, Board of Clean Water Services. So the first one's an announcement. Our CWAC, our Clean Water Advisory Commission, will be meeting this Wednesday at the Administrative Building Complex. They will be reviewing our research and innovation team's programs for research and providing input to optimize the operations of our wastewater treatment plant at Fernhill, as well as managing water quality on the Tualatin River and looking at those research projects to help us advance our understanding for the next, to prepare for the next permit. Otherwise, it's we're deep in budget work at Clean Water Services, and I'm looking forward to delivering our proposed budget to the board.
We are entering into that super busy period as boards, so reflective of all the work that our staffs have been doing to prepare us for next fiscal year. So at this juncture, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and but when we return from break, we're going to be adjourning to executive session. Since we are a little bit ahead of schedule, I'm wondering if there's the possibility that our last executive session might be moved up in case we can prepare for that before the lunch. So, but we'll see. I think if I recall the topic, I think it might be a little shorter for today than originally anticipated. Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute break until 10:25, and when we reconvene, we'll be heading into work session, and we will do the motions for those afterward. Thank you.